one of my first relationships with Edgerton came with Joe. My first day in German, I was invited to Joe's home, and he introduced himself to me as the church president. And he says, "We're going for a walk." I said, "Where are we going?" He says, "We're going to Edgerton," 25 years ago. And ever since then, I was able to understand the passion that Joe has for that old mining patch town that existed 1883 to 1905. I've been in German 25 years as his pastor and working in the community here, being on the faculty at St. Tikhon Seminary in South Canaan, and I can't believe how fast the 25 years went by. So I'm gauging the 20 years within the context of the 25 years, and how quick that town came up and how quick it came down. Joe Kronitzky was on the German Council for many years as its president. So he's a civic leader in the community. And he's also been the church president for over 32 years. So he's a man that's civic-minded, and he also has a heart, a spirituality that I have grown to know and to love and to appreciate. In this country, we need a paradigm shift, a change that has to take place. And I realize that I'm speaking to the choir here. People have to be passive to the voice of God, rather passive to the voice of ego, and open to the voice of God. Joe Kronitzky is passive to the voice of ego, and he's open to the voice of God. And I've been involved in this project, sort of grafted by Joe being his parish priest, and I'm proud to be part of the team with Dale Kecklock and his son David and Joe Kronitzky. And Joe's in the process of putting a book together on the old mining town of Edgerton. And Joe, I'd like to read the first page of the book. We've completed the first chapter. We're on the second chapter, talking of the founders of Edgerton, John and Jim Hosey. But the first chapter is entitled The Immigration Period. And in this first page, it'll give you a glimpse to who Joe Kronitzky is and the passion that he has for this town. See, in life, we have two types of visions. The things that we see and the things that we can't see, but they're there. And so part of this paradigm shift is to try to see the things that are difficult and hard to see, because they're present and they're there. These are Joe's words in the first chapter that we've completed. The sweet words spoken to our nation's immigrants. Welcome to America and Ellis Island, for some was also paraphrased and meant to say, after a day's journey to northeastern Pennsylvania, welcome to Edgerton. The new immigrant in 1883 brought with him a cultural baggage, traditions and customs, and a family life which this country was unfamiliar. The first stop for some of these early immigrants was Edgerton, PA, a mine settlement southeast of Carbondale, which developed along the same lines as many towns in the West. Like many of those boom towns, it became a ghost town when the coal under the earth was exhausted. Joe continues and he says, as I begin to complete my life's passion to complete this project, I also welcome you to Edgerton. The old mining town of Edgerton is very special to me. I have been interested since my early stage in life until this moment. Thank you for taking this journey with me as you read these words. And I also would like to say, as you listen to the words of Joe. For those who have labored, loved, suffered, and died, seeking a place to work and raise a family, despite the difficult times, express their true love, sacrifice, and labor for those families is dedicated to their memory. As I make my hike, only a 30-minute walk from my home, I begin my walk through the town only for a brief moment to think of the past, to feel the presence of those people as though I was part of that place and time. The memory of these immigrants and their journey has been traced on my heart. The words spoken to you in this journey come to you from my heart and soul. This old town of Edgerton will speak volumes of the self-determination, strong will, and pioneer spirit that has paved the way for us to enjoy the many blessings we take for granted. When we began to do the research, Dave Kecklock was able to provide for us a census of the people who live there, and also another census, the fatalities that took place. Joe gave me one Sunday morning, as I began to celebrate the liturgy, a list of names, 22 names of individuals who perished while they were working in Edgerton. And he said, Father John, please pray for them in the liturgy. And ever since he gave me those names, I have them in a proper spot, and every Sunday I remember their names. And this gives you an idea of the character that we're talking about in Joe Knitsky. Can you imagine finding out the names of those who perished and then bringing them to life in prayer, very close in proximity from my parish in East German to Edgerton? Not only does he feel their presence as he makes his journey and does his research, but he's a man who believes in God and prays for them, prays for the immortality of their soul, prays that they will never be forgotten, because those were difficult times, as you'll find out very quickly, and many of you know. And a sacrifice that was made really paved the way for us to enjoy the comforts of the life that we have, that I think so often society takes for granted. So it is that pioneer spirit, that immigrant period of good people with strong backs that came to raise their family and to pave the way for us here as we enjoy being citizens of this great country that we live in. Without further ado, it gives me honor and a privilege to present to you a friend, a spiritual son, a historian, a civic leader, and a man with a big heart who will speak to us this evening on the gracious, God-blessed town of Edgerton, that has not been forgotten, that is being resurrected by this good man, Joe Krunitzky.
Thank you, Father John, for your kind words of introduction and being a part of our team. Thank you. I want to express a special thank you to Joe Breyer and the entire staff here at the Genealogical Society and everyone present. Briefly, I want to express my thoughts and inner feelings of this blessed town of Edgerton. At the age of 12, I had a deep desire to try to understand the way of life about this town from my youth to this present day. Each time I visit this once liveliest, prosperous town, I feel a deep feeling inside of me that I almost want to be part of this hardened life. Each time as I pass through this community, an inner feeling within me tells me to and changes me as though I belong here for some reason I cannot explain. I live it, I see it, I understand it. It is that drives me to live the lives of those courageous people as one of my deepest passions in my life. Each time I visit and enter this town, I pray that I receive a revelation from God, that I may piece together a piece of history long forgotten, that these here have given their all should not ever be forgotten, but to live in the memories of those who remain, that those of this blessed town of Edgerton who have labored and survived and have gone into eternal rest. As I walk and ponder the past, I feel a presence of those people as though I took part in that place of time and their cries. The picture you have before you of Edgerton, I don't know if most of you have them, some of you may not have them. The picture you have before you today was produced by the Scranton Times. It was launched by Norman R. Brown, who was Vice President of the Edison Coal Company and Secretary-Treasurer of the Temple Coal Company, a holding company which has leased out its tract lands to independents. Mr. Brown is the only present employee of the Temple Coal Company who was with it at its time of its organization after the closing of Edgerton Coal Company. The Temple Company purchased the entire holdings. Memories will undoubtedly be stirred by this picture of old Edgerton, a mining settlement which developed along the same pattern as early boom towns in the West, and which, like many of those same boom towns, became when the minerals on the Earth's surface was evaluated. In the West, it was gold. In Edgerton, it was coal. Today, today in the area just beyond the Ellsworth Park Dam and the Casey Highway are many stone foundations shrouded by brush weeds, piece of scrap iron here and there, and some washed-out streets. A century and a quarter ago, the area was the site of Edgerton, one of the liveliest and most prosperous communities in the Hartlepool Bell region of the Anthracite region. Edgerton, in its beginning, was located in Luzerne County, now Lackawanna County. Edgerton was a patch town that grew up around a mine dug into the mountain and had a 5-story breaker. It developed almost overnight in 1883, and 23 years later, it disappeared almost in the blink of an eye when the coal ran out and the breaker shut down. I have been piecing together the history of the little village for many years. A group of friends and I are now planning a book based mainly on the reams of handwritten notes, stacks of newspapers, and other research material I have collected. The first mining in the area began in the late 1850s when John Hosey and his son dug an opening in the mountainside about 3 miles uphill from Archibald. and 2 miles southeast of Carbondale near the Powderly Breaker. And some of the displays, you'll see the Powderly Breaker in the location. It developed almost in 1883, and 23 years later, it disappeared almost in the blink of an eye when the coal ran out and the breaker shut down. The mines were sold to the Simpson and Watkins Coal Company, one of the leading independent operators of the anthracite region, in 1883, and the boom was on. So I think Dale can make reference to the Hosies.
Hosies, John, there was several Hosies there. Mostly, I'm sure my Aunt Rennie might even remember Will Hosey. My father told me about him. He delivered the goods up there to Edgerton. He may or may not be related to John. John was born in 1812 in Scotland. Came over here at about age 14 with his older brother. Never see his family again. Everything he touched turned to gold. He worked in the quarry industry in New York City, worked on the New York City waterways, came here, got involved in the coal, and him and his sons did discover coal there in the 1850s. Well, they sold it out to Simpson and Watkins, like we said, in 1883. John had passed away in 1881, and the son James sold it out there, and we have that in hard copy. We found it in the paper in James's obit there. But John was known as the hero of the Carbondale accident, 1846, January 13th, when 40 acres collapsed, and a number of men are still trapped. They never got them out. They're dead down there, 12 or 13 guys, I think. And he was trapped for 2 days, newly married. His wife was terribly distraught, and he thought, well, he survived the crash, the collapse, only to die of starvation and lack of water. Well, he found on his way out, he never wanted to talk much about it. When he did die, his son wrote a lot about it in the paper, and that's what we found out there. But I'm trying to piece together whether he's related to Will Hosey. It's the same name, but if any of you know me, all the research I've done, I have 65,000 names in my data. We're going to get them pinned together eventually.
Thank you, dear Ward. The Edgerton Drift, as it is called in the state mining reports, was the Clark vein, which engineers said contained highly quality anthracite as much as 20 feet thick. The vein began at the Powderly Breaker. A group of engineers hired by the Simpson and Watkins Coal Company discovered coal from 1 foot and then increased to 20 feet thick into the mountains. This mother lode of hard coal that began near the Devil's Eyebrow mine, southeast of the Hudson Coal Company's Powderly Breaker in Carbondale, and came to the surface in the area where the Hosies operated. When they obtained title to the workings, Simpson and Watkins built a breaker, a washery, and company houses for 200 to 300 families, 2 taverns, a school, a company store, and the town's most memorable structure, the Stone House, were built. That's on one of the displays too, about the Stone House. We'll talk about that a little later. No one is sure where the name Edgerton came from, but it could be a family name. But Edgerton is an English name meaning blessed town. For most of the next 2 decades, that's what it was. I have documented most of what took place in the years the past town existed. During my frequent walks, I have collected scores of artifacts. And many of them are here and left. We didn't bring quite a few today, but from bottles, pieces of chains, and remains of miners' tools, and even picked up a roll of Indian pennies I found in the stone wall foundation that dated from 1859 to 1902. When it became known that I had a storehouse of knowledge about Edgerton, I began receiving invitations to speak before various organizations and requests to guide walks through the abandoned town site for several years. I started telling the Edgerton story in 1989 when I gave talk to the Carbondale Historical Society of Northeastern Pennsylvania and numerous other groups. My friends and I plan to put it all down on paper in a book called simply The Town of Edgerton, 1883 to 1905. The chapter-by-chapter outline is already in Dale Keckleck's laptop computer, along with a lot of documents that have been collected. We are still searching for more information and ask anyone who can help fill in the gaps to get in touch with me. Father John, my pastor, Dale Keckleck and his son David, and Attorney John Carissa are also involved in this project. A deadline has not been set, but I would like to see the story of this blessed town published in early spring. Is that possible? Okay. The little patch town called Edgerton wasn't the only attraction on the side of the Music Mountains just east of Archel and German. There was the Edgerton Reservoir too. To most of the swimmers, fishermen, and picnickers who flocked there, it was simply called the Hosey. The present reservoir was built in 1924 by the Scranton Spring and Brook Water Company and supplied water to the Mayfield area. It is no longer used for that purpose. The popular name for the dam, the Hosey, apparently honors the Hosey family, which operated the first mines in the area and have built an earlier coffer dam for their workings. I have the articles of agreement of construction of the coffer dam of 1888 on one of the reports here, boards. A few words about Will Hosey. Some of you may have that as a picture. Will, he was a drayman with his team of horses who hauled many of the necessities, including kegs of beer, up to the tortuous dirt roads from German, of Prof. John Moran of Archibald. And there's also a picture of Prof. Moran, who was a school teacher up at Edgerton, on one of the boards. And he was a teacher who walked up the mountain 6 days a week, early enough to start the stove so the school would be warm when his pupils arrived. Sarah from Shoes, the man that owned the Stone House, who operated the hotel in the Stone House, and of William J. McDermott, who ran the saloon near the teenage station, just where the Edgerton Road begins. The McDermott Saloon is still in existence today. My interest in Edgerton began when I was 10 or 12 years old and hiked the area with my parents to pick blueberries. During World War II, I and other students from the grade school near my home went to the mountain to collect milkweed pods at the Stone House that were used to stuff life jackets. A portion of the wall was still standing. At that time, part of the wall of the stone wall was standing, and it got me wondering. On my journeys in my family baking business, I accumulated a lot of information about Edgerton. There were still people around town who lived there, and I was fortunate to have my route from Carbondale down to the valley and ended in Jessup. So I obtained a lot of information in those areas. Later, there were Sunday afternoon sessions around the kitchen table at my home with some of Sarah from Shoes' sons from Edgerton and others who knew about the village. We used to talk about it, the Stone House, the farms, the store, and Will Hosey. That I recently did a recent interview at the same kitchen table with Ed Rogers. It all came together. There were many questions I asked. I jotted down the answers. I learned while the Shoes Stone House was a hotel, one probably couldn't rent a room there. It was more like today's mom and pop stores selling shoes and other things that weren't available at the company store, which carried blasting powder, caps, carbide for headlamps, and other items needed for those who work underground. There's two pictures out in the audience, and there's a picture of the company store and some people standing before them. We're not sure, Gail, about who they might be, but I believe one person, and then was named, yeah,
James O'Dowd, probably
Ja-
related to
you- what was it to you, something to you? Oh,
that picture came from, we have feelers out everywhere, and I got an email from Washington DC, he said, I have pictures, 2 pictures at a company store. Would you be interested? I said, yeah, maybe, yeah, definitely. So he emailed me and he said, by the way, I'm going to be in Packville this coming weekend. Well, I was knocking on the door 10 after 7, and I got a chance to hold the original in my hand, which was very poor condition. I got a picture of that, the 2 of them there, and they're on our film that we showed there.
I'm not sure whether there was a store with groceries, other than flour, salt, and a few other staples. There probably wasn't much that the patch residents couldn't grow or raise themselves. Most had gardens and flocks and chickens, and there was plenty of wild game in the surrounding woods. One thing the village didn't have was a church. The school, which had classes Monday through Saturday, became a chapel on Sundays with clergymen from the valley conducting services. Some of those that didn't attend the schoolhouse services walked to churches in Archibald, Mayfield, and German. However, the school had a half-day class on Saturday mornings from 8 to 12 noon, Sunday night from 6 to 8, Bible studies. With the help of Dave Kecklock of Archibald, an avid historian in his own right, and my good friend Tom Cluffer, in his own right, obtained quite a lot of information. Thank you, Tom. And Dave for his photographic work. Thank you, Dave. In the 1900 U.S. Census for the Archibald 3rd Ward on Edgerton shows there were over 200 persons, most of them of Italian descent, residing in the village. It also had a polling place, the 3rd Ward, for voting the Borough of Archibald. A state report in 1892 says there were 398 men working, boys and men working in the Edgerton mine and breaker. Production that year averaged 424 tons per worker. The mining reports are on one of the displays too. During the 1902 Anti-Strike Company policing patrolling the property, shot 2 miners they found near the breaker. One of them wounded crawled down to the North Mountain to reach the office of Dr. Davis in German for treatment. My records show that the Temple Iron Company, successors to the Simpson and Watkins Coal Company, began carrying down the breaker on December 1st, 1905. By that time, Edgerton was a deserted village. Most of the families had left, many of them settling in other parts of Lackawanna County. A story in the Carpenter Leader of December 6, 1905 read like an obituary for this little town. It read, "The abandonment of Edgerton Colliery a week ago, the Temple Coal Company has been followed by the almost total disappearance from view of this little settlement, Edgerton. All remains of the place is 3 homes and a saloon operated by Mike Romaninski. The saloon is now for sale." Later, a reading says the saloon and the 3 homes were sold 3 days later. The coal companies sold the homes and much of the lumber salvaged from them that were used to build new ones in German and Mayfield. I can identify 3 that still stand. In the end, all that was left of the site was a huge compound that has been created near the breaker. The disappearance of in 1921 when it was sold to a Binghamton man and hauled away. A big steam shovel used to load the column had originally been built to work on the Panama Canal. I believe after the Edgerton's job was finished, the shovel was abandoned and allowed to rest away and sold to a very special, successful businessman by the name of John Bauman. I think you might live in Childs, and we talked to in Childs or Cardinal. Over the years, I walked over every inch of the town site and hillside where the breaker and mining were located. I can describe and point out the stone foundation for the school and the other buildings and the location of the town's three main streets that were simply called A, B, and C. During those days, the grass in front of the reservoir was always mowed. The stone walled big blocks of granite rock cut from the mountainside was beautiful. These days, the water flowing over the spillway is still a pretty sight, but the lawn is unkept. The door on the control house atop the dam is ajar, and brush has overtaken much of the area. I'd like to mention the mile rock on the old road halfway between Edgerton, German, and the dam in the park just beyond Aylesworth. The late Victor Slavinsky carved a World War I doughboy, a bugle pressed to his lips, which had a backpack, a bayonet rifle in his left hand, into the large boulder. In the background, the sun shines through a pair of mountain peaks. There are two inscriptions, one on November 11, 1918, the date on which the armistice was signed, and the other, peace is dear, but mother is sorrowful. When German World War I Veterans Park along Bridge Street in German was refurbished in 2005, there was a move afoot to move Mile Rock there. However, it was feared that it might be damaged while being moved, so a replica complete with a doughboy and inscriptions was made for this place. He also made two big Indian heads on the Edgerton Road, on two big rocks, pretty big size, two Indians with the feathers and so forth and so on. Very well done. For your information, according to the reports of the inspection mines in the year of 1892, the number of days worked at Edgerton for 1892 was 208 days. Tons of production of coal was 262,035 tons. Shipment of tons of coal, 246,629 tons. Number of employees, 398, including boys picking slate. Average tons per man, 124.6 tons. Number of fatal accidents for that year of 1892 was 2. Number of non-fatal was 6. Number of kegs of powder, 7,374 kegs of powder. Number of steam boilers, 6. Number of horse and mules, 46. Number of mine locomotives, 2. Other reports of fatal and non-fatal accidents from 1886 to 1896 are on the display boards. The Edgerton Coal Company paid their employees with silver dollars. A few Sundays ago, we had a tour to Edgerton. Approximately about 35, 40 people or more were there. Came and enjoyed the tour that lasted 5 hours with a stop at Aylesworth Park for food and drinks. Thank you for listening to me. Now Dale will present, can you present the slideshow? In approximately about 14 minutes. But I probably like to read, if I can find it, a letter in reference to Luxmore. Do you see that? Let's see where it is. Well, I wanted to tell you about a tragic drowning in the Aylesworth Creek that happened at a spring snow thaw on March 4, 1894. The Aylesworth Creek was raging with great force and height, carrying tree limbs, rolling stones that was cutting away from the stone foundations that were near the creekside homes. Mrs. Luxmore, her son John, 5 years of age, and daughter 3 years of age, were in their backyard. While the mother was baking bread in one of the outdoor ovens. Mrs. Luxmore saw her son John at the creek throwing some stones into the creek, and it fell in, and the mule barn boss was on the opposite side of the creek, and their home was on exactly opposite the mule barn. So the mule boss told one of his employees to get on a horse and run down to the bridge where the hunting club of Carville have their pavilion, to try to see if he can find him there. So the mule barn boss with his employees got on horses, and they checked the left side of the river, and mother and daughter went on the right hand, simply to find the son found in the debris around the bend in the river. So that kind of concludes what I have to say. There are many things to say, but we just don't have the time. Thank you very much.
Small girl, he was the only known communist in town. Well, lo and behold, one of my jobs I got for a tip was a book written by Joseph Dewar called The Veteran Communist Speaks. And he says in there they lived in Archville, his father and grandfather were Mountain Dwellers. So whether they were up there in Edgerton too, or whether they were Mountain Dwellers, apparently in Archville, so.
Okay,
Yeah, we're going to show this little film, and then we're going to have the band. Again, theater set out there, a friend of mine, Dave Anderson, he's a ham operator. And being ham operators, I'm promoting this not only locally, but around the world. When we contact someone overseas, we send a card, a little QSL card it's called, to confirm the contact. Mine is the picture of Edgerton. So far, we're advertised in Poland and Romania and Asiatic Russia and Italy. They've gone all over the world. But locally here, I was talking to Dave, and I was telling him what we're doing. And he said that he has a band and he'd like to write a song about it. So we met one evening for an hour with Joe at Dunkin' Donuts, and he was taking notes furiously. And then I said, next week we're going to go on a tour. We went up there, and he took his notepad, put everything together, and he has everything. It's all based on fact. And he goes, that's going to be last. We're going to show this 13-minute video. I wish we had a bigger screen, but this here is what we have. So I'm going to push it up. I don't know if anyone wants to come up closer, if you can't see that far up or what. This is like a promo video for the... Yeah, once they get started, if somebody wants to dim the lights, but I gotta keep them on till I get this going.
You want me to put the lights out there?
We're not ready.
I think it's sort of interesting, and I'll share that rather quickly with you now. This fellow, his name was this Lebbeus Edgerton, L-E-B-B-E-U-S Edgerton. In 1856, he was appointed paymaster of the D&H in Carbondale, and he did that for 13 years. He then became, in the 1880s, became the freight and passenger agent on the whole Pennsylvania division. And after he retired in 1884 on a full salary, which was very unusual for the D&H. Usually he retired, that was it. But Lebbeus Edgerton retired in 1884 on a full salary. And at that point, he then became the secretary and treasurer of the Carbondale Gas Company and the Crystal Lake Water Company. He and his family were members of the Trinity Church in Carbondale. The Edgertons were very fancy folks. They were very good friends with the Dixon family and all the top management of the D&H. And they traveled with them, and they got around a lot with the higher levels of the D&H. And the fact that he was paymaster of the D&H was a very high position in the company. Lebbeus Edgerton, was born in he was born in Vermont, in Randolph, Vermont, and he married this woman by the name of Jane Baldwin, B-A-L-D-W-I-N, and she was a pretty fancy person too. She was the daughter of the priest of the Episcopal Church in Vermont, where they lived, and she and her family came from Eastbourne, Sussex, in England before that. So they were pretty fancy folks. And Edgerton himself was the son of Lebbeus Edgerton. He was born in 1812 in Vermont, and he was the son of another man by the name of Lebbeus Edgerton, who was the governor of Vermont. So they were the Edgertons were well connected, both through the father and through the mother. And then when they came here, and then he became the paymaster of the D&H and became good friends with the Dixons and the Oliphants and that whole group. They were pretty well connected. So they may have had something to do with the fact of the naming of the community after him, since he was so well placed. an interesting fact about the Edgertons where they had 6 children, 2 sons and 4 daughters. In 1889, 4 of them were living. One, the oldest son, Lebbeus, he married the daughter of a very well-known Carbondale person by the name of W.W. Bronson, and they were also high-level folks in the Carbondale world, and he lived in Cortland, New York. And this fellow would work for the D&H for a while, but he had more interest in the Orient. He lived and worked in Japan and opened on Lackawanna Avenue in Scranton, 503 Lackawanna Avenue, the Scranton, China, and Japan Tea Store. So he was very interested in the finer things of one's table in the course of life. He had a sister who was Mrs. Charles Wilson, who lived in Nebraska City, Nebraska. Then there was another daughter, Kate, and she lived in Elmira, New York, and died in 1892. And another daughter, Mercy. So those are the 4 children who were alive in 1889. These Edgertons, many of them are buried in Maplewood Cemetery in Carbondale with a very impressive Edgerton stone. And there's a lot more to be said on these Edgerton folks. Every time I come across a little thing on Edgerton, I put it in one spot. But in 1881, they, for example, were traveling as guests of the Dixon family visiting the Great Lakes. So I mean, they were pretty fancy folks, the Edgertons. So that may explain why somehow the community was named Edgerton. Maybe not, but anyhow, they had a lot of very direct and high-level connections with the D&H. So I just wanted to.
We've got 2 different variations of this song about Edgerton. And what I'm thinking about doing is I'm going to give you the story first. And the tour was really interesting. I was asking a lot of different questions. Of course, normal people do that because if you want to find out about something, you ask. Which is all fine and well. And putting all the timeline, the story together and such, I had to, I wanted to make 2 different variations of this. This one that I'm going to do now takes the cake. This is the probably the original story of Edgerton. It's kind of nice when you hear a song. Yeah.
Hang on, he's getting
Yeah.
I didn't bring my Meyer key violin tonight, so that's settled.
It's quite interesting. I enjoyed the talk and the video.
He's checking. Ooh, Bruce.
Okay.
Check 1, 2. A tiny bit of feedback.
Okay. Ready?
Yep. 1, 2.
Where the breaker stands tall over Edgerton town. 500 plus miners worked underground, and coal was sought after so high in demand. 124 tons dug per man, and most were the Irish battalions opposed. At 10 cents per hour at 7 years old, making a living off anthracite coal, giving your wages to the company store. Some folks recall the town of Edgerton, only memories of a ghost town remain. Haunted streets from a whole town forgotten, for those that had died there, some ghosts still remain. to school every day, known as a one-armed man. Now John Luxmore, at the age of 5, he wandered from his home. He liked to go down to the creek and throw skipping stones. And mother was busy baking bread when she realized he was gone. When she did run, well, the little boss had found John 500 yards downstream, and the Tucks folks gathered around her when she began to scream. Another soul in a cold town forgot a day in the life of Edgerton town. In 1902, when the coal had run out, the houses that once stood there were all taken down, and the only thing that's left behind are vivid memories. Some big photographs of miners and grown-up trees. So stroll along the old road and listen carefully to the sound of the breaker where the miners used to be. Ghosts are mining in a coal town forgot a day in the life of Edgerton town. Some folks recall the town of Edgerton. Only memories of a cold town remain. Haunted streets from a cold town forgotten. For those that died there, some ghosts still remain. For those that died there, some ghosts still remain. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little piece.
It's still new.
There's
so
one
some
of
bugs to
a
work out
couple.
still.
Like I said, there's a couple of different variations. We warmed up with this one. We're gonna have a little fun with this. We're gonna play this one for you as a little bit of a treat. This is called Edgerton 2.
Well. Q&A series, you know.
Yeah, right? Ready?
All right, here we go.
1, 2, 3, 4. With a breaker stands tall, covered Edgerton town. 300 West miners had worked underground, earning a living off anthracite coal and giving their wages to the company store. They're not mining coal here anymore, only a foundation where echoes of mining in the air. And they're not mining coal here anymore, only a foundation where the breaker used to be. Oh, photographs of miners near the general store. In Edgerton, a vivid memory. In Edgerton, a vivid memory.
Hey, how about from the Black Gold Band Book?
I have a feeling that was coming. No, those are two different variations. We've tried tinkering. I was going to write a third, but I figure enough is enough. And stated on facts, I figured that Edgerton one was about the closest, so I had a lot of fun with Edgerton.
Yeah, I think Dave did a really good job on this, so again.
Still new. Forgive me for the mistakes, but that
You know,
happens.
for an up-and-coming songwriter, I think he really did a good job, did his homework, and
And considering some of us only have been playing this song 2 days.
trying to rehearse it last night, and it does hit home because I come from a long line of Polish coal miners from out the Altoona area, and I know how that, you know, when you lose everything, it's all of a sudden you say, there's all my history gone. So, but we, as far as requests go, if you want to write them on the back of a $20 bill,
Yeah,
pass it right here.
$50 for an autograph.
And
Thank you much, everybody. Appreciate
and
it.
once again, Black Sage is the band. I'd like to introduce everybody. Dave, this is Bonnie. Bonnie, that's Dave.
Oh, okay.
Bruce is over there.
Bruce is all in the back.
And TJ's over there.